Thanks for checking out this highlight from Epic Loot Radio. If you enjoyed this highlight, be sure to click the top link in the description to watch the full podcast. But now, on to the show. I want to transition into our kind of big meaty topic. Obviously, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen information come out about New World, and that's got a lot of gamers. I would say rightfully. I think that some of the reaction is understandable, but I think and I've expressed my opinion a couple of times, but that's why I wanted to bring in a panel here and have the discussion about cash shops. What is pay to win? Is this a good sign? Is this a bad sign? Will this hurt the game overall? And just kind of get a round table. And we'll start with you, Ruri. To give a synopsis really quickly over it, is that the NDA was broken. It was leaked essentially about a cat shop with cosmetics with keywords at launch, which essentially is okay, they're going to do this, or they're not going to have pay to win at launch. Does that mean it's coming later? Then essentially the internet does what the internet does best and kind of just just jumped on a few of those words. And then essentially you see New World go quiet for at least a week, which I thought was the right call, because it's like, guys, you got to get your message together, because they didn't have the ability to kind of say, hey, this is what our plan is. It just all came out because of the NDA break. And then they released their message this week, which we again see people kind of glom onto a couple of key words. And so what's your take, Rory, on this whole situation?
I mean, I think that they took a week to think about what they were supposed to say, and then they said the wrong thing again.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, the most important thing about this message is the intent. And the intent that they have is you can tell that they want to sell you stuff, and the things that they want to sell you effectively do give you in-game power, whether they choose to believe it or not.
Right.
The first thing that I want to bring up is they said at launch, we're not going to be selling things that give you power, which implied that, later down the line they would. And then the examples that they give you, one of them is rested XP, which to me is completely and utterly ridiculous. It basically, the whole concept of rested XP, the fact that they want to sell you rested XP tells me that they don't understand what rested XP was invented for. Mm-hmm. The reason for the existence of rested XP is there's going to be players that are going to have enough time to grind for as long as they want. They don't need rested XP. And then there's going to be players that have their jobs and can only play 2 hours a day or something like that, maybe 1 hour a day. And for those players, they log out at an inn, they get rested XP, and that allows them to catch up with the other players. The simple fact that they would sell rested XP is completely and utterly ridiculous and destroys the entire concept of rested XP to begin with. And then they're like, oh yeah, we wouldn't sell you things like power, rested XP. I directly consider that power. But let's say you wouldn't consider rested XP power. Then they're like, we'll sell you fast travel. And I'm just like, that is literally power in the concept of New World.
Especially in New World. Especially in this game. Go ahead.
I've played the beta of New World, and the big portion of it was ground domination, dominion of a zone, because if you are in the wrong faction, you are screwed. And if somebody else was in the right faction, they're like, oh, we need to be in this place at this time. Being able to fast travel there is a literal translation to power, straight up. Mm-hmm. There's no even discussion to be had there. And then to top it off, they're like, oh, and the rest of it is just cosmetics. And it's like, okay, just cosmetics is one thing. Sure, I'll be able to take some cosmetics. The problem becomes how much of those cosmetics are going to be available in game versus how much of the cosmetics are going to be available in the store. What are the options that we're going to have? And that is something that we can't tell from a beta or an alpha. We'll only be able to tell.
Nobody can tell. You can't tell me. You have to show me. You can say, I promise I'll never do this. And then 20 years go by and you're like, oh, you never did that. Okay, thank you. Yeah. But you could be like, I promise.
In some ways, I'm happy that they haven't said that. They've said that there's no at launch. They haven't said it's not going to happen. So I'm happy that they're being honest at the fact that they have the idea and they have the plans to possibly implement this. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the few people that play Fantasy XIV that supports the job boost and the skip, because I have multiple different characters. So I don't want to go through the story of multiple characters.
Right.
I personally would like, I know they'd never do this, but I would personally like it to lock off any kind of jump potion to an achievement that you unlock from completing something with your main character. Yeah. At least achieve the max level with your first character in any MMO before you're able to purchase any sort of jump. That would be my way to implement it.
Right. And
you don't have people just pay instantly to win.
Right. So that's where... Go ahead, Rory. Yeah, please.
I think the most important thing from the messaging that we've received from the New World devs is their intent. Because, like, ultimately, you can tell me whatever you want, but your intent and the fact that they double down on it with their second message, you know that they're intending on selling you items that are questionable in terms of like their legitimacy from a gameplay competitive standpoint, right? That's their intent. And at that point, I just don't trust them anymore. It's the same thing that happened with Destiny when they nerfed the experience. I could never trust those developers anymore. And now we've seen them like mess things up with their cosmetic armor system that's completely ridiculous from what I hear people say. And it's just like when you get to that point and that is the messaging that they are going for, this literally took me from someone that when I played the beta, I was like, I can see that there's balance problems here, but the gameplay that is here is very interesting to me and I'm definitely going to be playing it when it comes out. That was my stance when I came out of the beta. And now, after these two messages, I'm like, I'm never going to play this game. I don't care what you do to it. Even if it's pitch perfect when it comes out, I'm never going to be interested because in the back of my mind, I'm always going to know that your intent for this game is to eventually milk the crap out of the player base for everything they're worth. And I'm not interested in that. Like, I'm just not, it's over for me, that type of stuff.
Is there anything that would change your mind?
That Amazon doesn't have any history with this either. Like, they don't have a gaming history yet, so they can't, like, there's goodwill when it comes to Square Enix and other MMO developers. But with Amazon, there is no goodwill yet because they haven't released a product.
Right. There's nothing we can trust. There's no build. Like,
yeah.
Everything is smoke and words until you have something that's actionable and trustworthy to say, okay, yeah, like, here's what they mean by this. I have no issue with Amazon wanting to make money. I mean, like, that it would be like silly, but they have to deliver a good, if not great game. And if they don't do that, then nope. Then all of the cash shop, everything that, this has come out over the last couple of weeks is completely just worthless because if it's not a good game, no one's going to play it. If it is a good game, then the conversation revolves around what ultimately is appropriate monetization, what is fair and to both parties as the player as well as the developer of that. I'm gonna jump right now into the core aspect of what they posted this week to set the actual words. We could talk about that. We'll come back to it as well. And if you guys are watching with us live, I've actually posted the link if you want to come in. If you've got to you don't need to have a camera, but as long as you have a good mic, you can actually funnel into the on deck area for the software. And we can actually let you also weigh in on your thoughts and have a kind of a more lively discussion rather than just chat comments for this episode of Epic Loot Radio. But to go through it here, we've got greetings, adventurers. We are releasing our in-game store today for alpha players to test content and provide feedback in preparation of our August 31st launch. The store will allow in-game purchases for cosmetic items outside of our deluxe edition and pre-order bonuses, and we have received a lot of feedback already. I bet they have. Like I wish that was bolded or whatever.
Feedback.
We've received it. We've received this feedback, and believe that it's important to make sure that the store is viable now for players to experience, or visible, if I could learn to read, to test directly. Now, items that are in the store during the alpha will be purely cosmetic. Here's another thing that is just. Yep. Let's say they have the best intent. Like you brought this up, Rory. Let's say they have the absolute best intent. The language they're using here is essentially just allows for so much, because we don't have trust, right? Like if we trusted them, like, oh yeah, they have all these games and they're done really well and they never take advantage of the player. Like that would be, nobody would look into that statement at all.
It's like those lawyer contracts that just provide them with the maximum latitude possible to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
There's during the alpha, it's going to be purely cosmetic, but when we actually receive the game,
then anything can go. But I think they said the fact that it's going to take about a year for certain paid things to come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they said about a year. They said minimum.
Right. And I fully expect to see with the game itself if they because when you're Amazon, when you're this size, when you're investing this kind of money, what makes sense? So outside of the cash shop, right? It makes sense to release paid expansions. That seems to be a very well accepted kind of mannerism, especially from a taxable mindset, right? Oh, this is our capital taxable versus our our general revenue. But outside of the expansion, the question is how do you kind of cover the gap in the year, right? ESO doesn't have a subscription. It has an optional subscription, but then they have the yearly expansion as well. So if you think about it, even with Destiny, no sub, but a yearly expansion, they basically just kind of take their subscription fee up all at once, and then they have a cash shop and seasonal content to kind of monetize the in-between ways, like for those who are actively interested in that style of content. Anyway, go ahead.
ESO also has optional dungeon DLC as well as the expansion. So
yeah, oh yeah. So it's that there's lots of different ways that games can make money, and that's what I hope that this kind of conversation turns into. Like, what would be the ideal in this case? So anyway, so cosmetic can provide no gameplay advantages. As the game evolves, we may add new categories to store items based off of the player's desires. We may make mistakes, but that's what we're testing to engage with our community and solicit feedback. The alpha store test will include an example skin, an emote, and dyes. And these are not the exact items that we'll sell in live, but will give you the idea of the type and the flavor. So we can kind of take a look here. You have the tree splitter skin, a flex emote, scarlet dye, black dye, gold dye. Anything out of what they were showing right here that's a red flag to anybody on the panel?
No. I mean, is there a black dye in there? Did I see that right? Okay,
yeah, black dye.
That to me, that specific color, that's a bit of a red flag, to be honest, because that everybody loves the color black. Like, let's be real here. I mean, for instance, look at Final Fantasy XIV. Isn't gunmetal black like the most expensive color of all in the auction house?
Yeah, but it's
black and white.
So,
go ahead, Chille.
Gunmetal dye is only from scripts, so that's why it's so expensive.
But I think there's also a lot of demand for black dye, is what I'm getting at.
Oh yeah.
From my experience in most games, black is one of those colors that is super important. So, they're obviously going to monetize that. Like, you don't see them monetizing. I mean, there's scarlet dye, but there's nothing, and a golden dye, right? That's what it is, because I can barely see in the video. So there's deep red, black, and gold. They're not monetizing like a brown. Nobody wants a shade of brown. Nobody cares about brown or yellow or some. No, they're monetizing the black. So that's the thing that kind of bothers me off the top of my head. Go ahead. There's going to be like a light black version in the game. It's going to be like some kind of like a gray that's not quite there. And you're going to be able to tell the difference, like, oh man, if I had black, it'd be so much better. That's one of the first strings that they're pulling right there. But I also think that's kind of fair game. But the fact that it's black also pushes me a little bit towards.
I agree. It all depends if there's a equivalent in game.
Yeah,
because Final Fantasy XIV does have soot black dye. I know it's not gunmetal black dye, but soot came out first, so it'll be interesting to see the difference between the colors and whether it is, you can't get anything that's just, equivalent in game. If there's an equivalent in game, I don't see the issue, especially if it's not much different. If it's like one is black and one is slightly dark gray, then yeah.
Chaos.
See, that Chaos Prime comment is exactly the point of it. This is a new game, and their primary concern right now is how they can like spin this story about their shop in a positive light. That's what they're worried about. Like, they're not that concerned talking about class balance, weapon balance, whatever. They're not concerned about talking about how fun the game is. They're concerned about, hey, by the way, we might sell you rested XP. We might sell you fast travel things. What that tells me is that if you're selling fast travel, most likely traveling in your game is not going to be fun. And I can tell you from my beta experience, it's not. It's long trudges of just like running. Right. There wasn't even mounts. I'm assuming there's going to be mounts in the actual final game. There wasn't even
mounts. Change it up. Well, because the travel doesn't necessarily like fast travel. I think is fine if it has a cost and have a value, because being the world is so giant, there is a value that creates an economy of if you can get an item in A and then you need that item in B. That what's the time to go get said item and move said item. Final Fantasy XI is key in that aspect. Travel is a fast, resource in that regards. If you're able to get around the map faster, you are winning. You are able to make money. You are able to do way more, and that ends up becoming kind of a key aspect to playing the game. Same thing with here. The question of mounts, the questions of these things is that it has to be hopefully considered into the game's design at the beginning, because if they don't design the game to have mounts and then eventually add them in, it completely would change the economies that are established based off of those going on supply runs and, things of that nature. Like, okay, you could break whole markets up that way. And then fast travel itself would take that and say, oh, if I can get there and here and fast travel for money, I can turn that into in-game money, which I think is a concern. So that's definitely something that is a concern. Now, for those listening in the audio version of this podcast, Chaos says they're going to monetize everything, and that's my dear. I'm thinking, and that's pretty clear. But either way, It's a new IP, and they should be building a community, not worrying about how to fleece their community. I think that's a really great comment. Thank you. Let's see here. Fear not, my dear.
That's my fear. But
I think the funniest thing with all this microtransaction talk, you know what we haven't heard about yet? Is if there's ever going to be any Amazon Prime
connection.
Connection.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't connect this to Amazon Prime. I think that would make sense. They connect Amazon Prime as a part of like Twitch Prime, to various other games. Not to connect it with your own game would be like, well, that was a miss. I don't know if that'll be on day one, but I know that I feel like that's going to be something they integrate. Now, Fabled Way says, it reminds me of Black Desert the first time. It was really fun, little novelty. Afterwards, it just became a useless time sink to him. And then let's see here. It does motivate the city-to-city trading, and which is nice, and it also means mounts and levels become more important. But otherwise, it's just minutes, if not hours, wasted regarding travel. All right, I'm gonna keep moving on because I obviously monetization is a hot topic, and there's a little bit more we need to cover in the post, and then we can come back to more of the discussion here. Their plan is to have an in-game store that lets us create an outlet for players to find enough value in store items that they are happy to purchase them. What will make players happy to purchase things from the in-game store is if they love the game
being good.
If the game is good, yeah. Go ahead.
Let me tell you something. I usually don't buy a lot of stuff in game stores and whatnot. But for instance, in the case of Monster Hunter World, they made like a bundle of a pack of DLCs, costed like 40 euros, something like that. I bought that bundle. I was like, give me all the DLCs. I don't even use most of them. I was like, I just want to throw more money at you. Like, this game's so good, let me throw more money at you. Like, that's what they need to focus on. Just make a good game. People will give you more money. They will buy the things that you're selling
happily
if you just focus on making a good game.
Yeah.
The problem is that nowadays everybody's focused on, I got to make sure that this thing is monetizable and whatnot. Like recently I saw another article, a little bit unrelated, but kind of relevant to this point, which was about Overwatch 2 and their new team lead, because Jeff Kaplan left Blizzard. Their new team lead was talking about what they're doing for Overwatch 2, and the words that he was using, it was like, oh, we're really trying to come up with a way to get players to continue playing, to get players to continue logging in and having fun with their friends. And I'm like, actually, he didn't say having fun with your friends. That's the point. At no point during his sentence was he saying, we're really focusing on improving this game, making the game better, making the game fun. And it's like, we're focused on finding ways to get you hooked on it and coming back every day. Engagement. That's the only thing that matters. Yeah. And this is the same thing bonus. Here. Yeah.
Go ahead. Chile, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I was going to say daily login bonus. That's what they're going to do.
Daily login. I don't like daily logins. I do not like that. I hate
daily login bonuses. That's one of the fastest ways of getting me out of your game is like put a daily login bonus in there. I'll be like, oh, okay.
They work though, and that's the thing. I know, like, because I logged in today on Guild Wars because they're giving away like living seasons as a part of their road to the End of Dragons, and yeah, every time you log in, there's something for you. With that game, and honest, like it works. There's a psychological thing, but there's a point of like no return. There's a breaking point in human psyche where it's just like this feels like I don't want to log in, but the reward is too good not to log in. Then over enough time that I think that wears on you to the point where people are just like, I'm done. I have to hardcore separate from this. Go ahead.
And because then the problem becomes the risk of that, in my opinion, is that eventually when someone breaks out of that and they're just like, oh, I missed one day. Oh, I missed another one. You're gone forever. Like this happened to me, for instance, in Shadowlands. I was playing Shadowlands pretty regularly with a couple of friends of mine. And I took a 2-week break, I think, because I went on a vacation or something. And when I came back, I was like, "Oh, it's the dopamine hits are not working anymore.
Yeah.
It's over. I'm done."
It's done.
Because I was being forced to do like 20 hours of chores a week to get to that good part of the game, which was like raids and mythic dungeons and whatnot. And eventually, when I cut off from that loop, and I was like, "Oh, I haven't done it in so long. Now I missed out on all these things. I don't want to do it anymore." Done. Over. Forever. Never went back.
Chat saying, and with Fable coming in, dailies, weeklies, even monthlies should be your incentive to log in again. I guess he meant shouldn't. Content, hopefully on a rotation. 14 does okay-ish with tomestones, I feel, if you value them, that is. I've been playing Final Fantasy XI again, classic, and it honestly has been a beautiful experience so far. It's been a beautiful experience in regards to that. It doesn't have these things that we've grown to be frustrated at. It doesn't have, and you feel it when it's like, why am I logging in? I'm logging in, A, for the community. B, I'm logging in because like there's like things that I want to do. There's downsides to this too. Like there's, I like to hands down where like, well, I guess I'm not going to party tonight, so I guess I'm not leveling. I guess I'll go do something else. There's a lot of things to do, but if that something else didn't interest you, it's very easy to see how people drop off that game really quickly because it's not forgiving and it doesn't sit here and hold your hand even right at the start. Like there's no like, hey, welcome, here's what everything means. Anyway, we'll continue on our post before we get off on a rant. Anyway, additional opportunities to provide value. Releases will showcase new dyes, apparel, weapon skins for players to customize their characters, as well as themed decorative furnishings and additional housing pets for players that they can purchase. Cosmetic items will not provide any perk for those or boost to stats. Now, what's interesting is that when it comes to housing, that we do know housing and what you put in it will actually affect you in the game. That will have a real world, like have a boost as long as you pay your housing taxes. Thus, you get to keep those perks. So, like putting in items that don't provide that, it'll be interesting to see what that ratio looks like. Just chilling? Is that what you're highlighting, Chille? While in the game store will provide additional opportunities for customization and feature unique cosmetic items, there's a wealth of visually diverse in-game loot for players to discover all across the tournament. At the same level of aesthetic quality in items that can be found in the store, our goal is not to make the cosmetics offered in the store better, but different than existing gear. We understand players work hard for their gear and have no intention of diminishing the value of their favorite pieces. And often the store items are additive for role players and players who like to change their appearance frequently, aka whales would be, I think, the appropriate term. Yeah. Below are some examples of in-game versus purchasable in the store. So they show you in-game, and then like right here is in the store in and of itself. So it's not anything that's like, oh, that has a fancy whatever. The other thing like that New World has, and it's kind of going for it, being that how they've set up the world and the lore, it's like so many different cultures have been to Eternum all throughout time. So you have a lot of visual aesthetics that you can draw from in terms of history. But essentially, if all of a sudden their store items become very flashy and glowy and like over the top ridiculous, like that would essentially and could like impact the visual experience of the world itself. If all of a sudden everything has this like real world kind of grit to it, and that's the theme style, which so far that's what the game has offered, then essentially you end up, I think, having something that is visually like frustrating for me to look at, to where it's like there's some high, neon pink, sparkly, like rainbow unicorn, gear. Well, like, can I not play with that guy? Because everybody else here is kind of set into this thematic tone. Any thoughts on kind of what we just covered here?
No, not much, because there's not enough in-store things to compare. Because like this is what they're showing us. Now imagine if there's like a Tron-like skin in the store.
Yeah.
Just like something completely out there. Then you're like, okay, dude, we see what you're doing. All right. We needed more in-store examples is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We need to wait to see what they're actually going to do with the store before we can actually complain about what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I wonder if there's like a 4-seater car, for instance.
So they say... Here's our Final Fantasy XV crossover. At launch, we're going to offer themed cosmetic items across a variety of categories, visually on par with the endgame gear, such as themed apparel and weapon skins, themed skins that can be applied to existing apparel or weapons that change your visual style, housing decor, pouches and decks, emotes, which we've seen, dye packs, which we've seen, company crests. New designs will be available to store. Personalize your company's insignia. We won't consider selling anything other than cosmetic items until 2022. at the earliest. So probably most likely a year. The
So
thing though,
this
I'm going to say this,
this
though,
com-
like what Chili said, like at least they're saying this. At least it's not like we promise we'll never ever even think about something that will make you unhappy. We promise to, because then in a year's time, it's like at least for somebody who's like trying to decide that their $40 is worth it. At least that we can say, hey, this is what they've said. Go ahead, Rory.
So this comes out on the 31st of August, right?
Yes.
I seem to remember that date. So this is what, 5 months?
5,
Something
6
like
months,
that, right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's 5 months. So it's like 5 months, we unleash. It goes. Monetization goes brrr. All the monies.
Well, depending on also how the game is received, that's very well possible, right? Because I would say that if nothing else, New World devs have shown that they are listening, they're applying feedback, they're working and having that level of communication. That can easily go awry, right? Like we can sit here and say, we've said it on the show numerous times, gamers will optimize the fun out of anything. Like whales, if they end up funneling like and driving the game comes out, it's just there, right? It just exists. Nobody's really playing it, but the people who are playing it are spending lots of money, therefore driving the game in a direction that it might never recover from. In theory, like we don't really know, because again, those sparkly wing pink unicorn, outfits that then vastly contrast with what they were like their original vision, could be interesting to see. 2 more sections and then we'll dive back in, because I want to get some more thoughts. And also, guys, we posted the link. It looks like we actually have, some people kind of funneling into the chat here. I'll kind of post the link again if you want to join us live, and we'll see here. Just have a decent mic, and we'll go from there. All right. Maintain a level playing field. The in-game store content will not give players an advantage in PvE or PvP gameplay. Our goal is to not provide anything that players will find pay to win for in-game store offers. Now, no items in the store will give players instant lifts to their overall gear score, experience points, or impact territory control. No item in the store is to gate the experience game mechanics. Players should never feel like they have to spend additional money to experience New World once they've purchased the game as a price to pay at launch, and it lets you play the entire released game themselves. They want to embrace veterans and welcome in new arrivals. MMOs live off the blood of the sprout, right? Like if you don't have new people coming into your persistent world game, it becomes rather desolate rather quickly. But let's go ahead and talk about it. While the tournament will be full of veteran players, we anticipate new players landing on its shores for years to come. Well, after launch, we will consider ideas for items that influence mechanics like rested XP, both through the store and earned in-game. This would allow late to the game players entering a tournament to catch up at a pace most comfortable for them and fight alongside their friends in in-game content. While we're not creating a pay-to-win environment, the more players that are able to experience endgame content and participate in endgame modes, the healthier the game experience will be. The timing on when we release any sort of boost would depend on player sentiment, feedback, and how we see new players progressing through the game well after launch. If we decide to implement these types of items, they will also be obtainable through in-game methods. Does allowing you to attain the same items in a cash shop help, or does it? Or are you neutral, or do you hate it? What do you think? We'll start with Chili.
I feel like, okay, I'm going to add this, right? They keep saying rested XP being sold.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is not rested XP. This is, in fact, XP boosters more than anything. Rested XP is when you've logged off and you're away for a couple of days or a little bit of time, and then you log back in, and that's rested XP. This is just buying a booster pack.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically an XP multiplier. I can't say I'm 100% against it, because I played Warframe and I spent money on boosters on Warframe.
Well,
so I can't
again, the question though is that, like, if you can still get the boosters by playing the game, like in my mind, like 14, you got gear that you play and it gives you boosted experience. Same thing is that you pre-order, you can get an item that will boost your experience. That it's like you can still go and get a similar item in the game by going and actually playing the game itself. It's not. It also doesn't work past a certain level, so it's not like boosters would ever help cover that gap. Let's say, they decide to raise the level cap at some point. Boosters are ineffective so people can try to race, because people enjoy races in these kind of games. So that way you're not sitting here saying like, well, I better be buying up boosters so that I can close that gap in the race itself. But
it sounds like they might do that, to be honest, from that though.
Yeah.
To me, for starters, I think it's quite arrogant of them to just say, "Oh, a tournament's going to be full of veteran players." They're like, "Our game's going to be super successful." Like, it's like, for starters, that's a little bit arrogant. But besides that, when it comes to items being sold in a store and in game, I have one word, not one word, but like one system for that, and that is the Diablo 3 auction house that literally destroyed that game. Like single-handedly, the implementation of an auction house made that game so bad that it was the only Diablo game that I didn't really reach maximum difficulty on release because I just stopped playing because it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Because when you implement something like that on a store, you're going to balance the dropping of the item in the game to be a lot more rare to make sure that the item that's in the store is valuable. That's exactly what they did to loot. And that's why when Reaper of Souls came out, then they were like, okay, we implemented Loot 2.0, we took away the auction house, now everything's good. That's when the game started being good again. And that's the problem. It's like, it doesn't matter if the item is available in store and available in game, because every single time, either the developers or someone from marketing or someone from sales will come in and say, make that thing drop less to get people to buy it in the store. Every single time, every single developer, every single time. It never changes. It literally never changes. So that I completely...
Go, Chille.
Sorry, and you brought up the Final Fantasy XIV thing, but really, that's only from up to level 25, isn't it? And then
the current one is
80.
Yeah, the current the earring that's about a pre-order goes up to 80. So they've had a couple different pieces of gear.
And if you go to Boja, there's an achievement reward for 1,000 turn-ins, where you get an XP earring, which is 70 watt 80.
Yeah.
But that's only 10% XP versus 30% from the pre-order. So
it's less valuable basically. Yeah, even in 14, it's less valuable. But the point here is, to me, is like they're looking to monetize a problem that they haven't even run into yet. So like, I'm pretty sure that Realm Reborn did launch with a level boost and a story skip, right? That probably came in like maybe Stormblood, or was it during Heavensward even? I don't know. You guys,
the level boost came into play, I believe, with Heavensward.
I thought it was the end of Heaven. Like
it wasn't at the launch at Heavensward, but it was like, yeah.
Okay, so it's like these guys already like, there's gonna be a problem in this game. They know there's a problem. They're not even thinking about a creative solution to that problem. There's like, oh, it's fine. We'll just sell a boost and they'll skip it. It's like, no, you should be creating value in that content. That content should be valuable to players. Whereas, for instance, in 14, sure, they added the thing. The reason they added, in my opinion, is because at that point, they have an established player base. There's new people coming in. They want to play with their friends. I think it's somewhat justifiable because it's a problem they didn't really think ahead.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. That content that is in Final Fantasy 14, in my opinion, is still valuable. Like, I played through Realm Reborn in 2019, and then I played Heavensward, and then I played Stormblood, and then I played Shadowbringers, and all of that content was valuable. The one that was hard to do was Coils, because nobody was running Coils anymore. But other than that, I ran all of the content. I mean, everything. I ran all the raids. I ran all the trials. I ran literally everything there was to run, and I found value in every one of those bits of content. Whereas here is like the first solution they go is like, oh yeah, well, they'll skip it. It's like, skip it. No, create value. Like, either create value or streamline the process in-game as opposed to extorting money out of people. Think of a creative way to do it in-game. Solve this in gameplay somehow.
Yeah.
This is... I don't understand.
I think for me, when you talk about gameplay, the solution is trade. I think essentially that boosts, if they were tradable, you'd get a drop, you could put it up on the market, and if somebody wants to purchase that boost, they have that, and then they have the option of purchasing it within game or whatever. And if you're going to sell anything to the player, PSO2 does this. Like, if you buy something, certain items, there are certain things that are market restricted, like within any game. But if like, oh, somebody bought this and they didn't really ended up wanting it or needing it because it came a part of a package, or their at PSO2's loot box case, it's like, oh, you can actually put that up on the in-game market. So you, the player who's never spent a dime, wants that, you could actually buy it from somebody using in-game currency. And I think essentially having that ability to trade gives the player more choice. You want to play and grind out in the game, you're not cut off from anything else out of there, but somebody is still purchasing that and therefore supporting the game with the development with their money. But that was their choice as well. They know, like, okay, I can do this. There's balancing issues, and I'm not going to sit here and we're not going to like nickel and dime like the every potential balance issue of that idea. But as a simple way of just how I think about it, I go trade. Like, if I get the battle pass that they've kind of talked about, like as ideas that they're kind of thinking through, trying to monetize between the expansions, because they have talked about paid expansions, then it's like, great. All right. If somebody wants to go and purchase something, they get something out of the battle pass that like, I don't really care for that. If they can trade that onto the market and I can choose to purchase it with my in-game gil or gold or whatever they're in it. Like they call it coin right now, but it's like, I wish they would call it doubloons. If I could kind of participate in that economy, it will always help to give value to that in-game economy, thus making it to where it's like, yeah, there's a cycle here that if I want to go do all of this other stuff and I get money for that, I can then decide if I want to engage in that market. Ruri, you look like you have a thought on that subject.
I was just thinking that Chille said about the Warframe stuff that he buys boosts for Warframe, and to me it's like, okay, but Warframe is free, so it's like it's okay for them to have that type of stuff, right? Whereas this is going to be a game that you buy. This is buy to play. I don't know if there's going to be I assume there's no subscription model, right?
No sub model, yeah.
Yeah, but you're still buying the game. It's like if you want to have all of these cash shop things, then just release it as a free to play, and then I have no criticism. It's like, okay, whatever, it's free to play. You can do whatever you want. But it's like if their thing is, oh, you're going to charge you for the box, and on top of it, we're going to sell you rested XP and boosts and all of these other things, I'm like, I'm not okay with it.
Okay, let's finish this up, and then I've got Firebird on deck to come in and weigh in on this with us. Heading towards launch, we're excited to test the functionality of our store and receive feedback on the items sold within it from the alpha community. Data from the alpha test, as well as feedback from testers themselves, will be studied closely, and tuning will be done on the store and content that we prepare for launch. The launch of New World is just the start. We plan on to consistently ship game updates with new content and drops for years to come, and we hope you join us on the shores of Eternum when New World releases on August 31st. Thanks again for all the help and support. So, we did it. We made it through. That was actually not a long post, but I love the discussion here. Thank you so much for checking out this highlight from Epic Loot Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe button, and more. And check out our other channels, Ginger Gaming Radio, Ginger Prime, and Work to Game for more content. Thanks for being here, and you're awesome.